Hey, everybody. Welcome to Learn From Us podcast. As always, it's your great pal, Paul and Seth here. We are here on Zoom. We are not in our beautiful studio in Richfield, Ohio. We're on Zoom, and we are very happy to have in one of my, Paul, all my friends are dear. As you know from former podcasts, all of my friends are dear, but this guy's right up my alley. This is Brady Puryear. Brady Puryear owns a wedding and basically photography album studio in California called Blacksmith Printing Co., and he's an enormous fan of the show. Brady, how are you, my love?
I'm doing well.
I know for a while we had this show going, and you weren't watching, and then something triggered. What triggered to have you watch every episode we've ever offered?
First off, I didn't even know you were doing it.
That's how friends we are.
I thought you were only doing the Seth and Beth podcast.
Okay.
And you were bouncing around from so many things in during that time working with, Focus 3 and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So I wasn't aware of this podcast. And then, I just watched a couple episodes, and to be honest, I just love Seth. And so when I miss him, I'm like, let me throw in a Learn From Us episode. Just so I can see my boy, But then, no, I found myself agreeing with a lot of stuff that Paul said. I liked some things. He's definitely got me thinking differently about some things. We've talked, or you've misquoted me 100 times on Dave Ramsey on this podcast.
I misquote myself. I misquote myself, so.
Yeah.
I thought you were saying I did. I'm like, what the hell did I misquote?
No. He's always like, well, Brady says that Dave Ramsey says, and then he says something totally wrong.
Listen, yesterday's episode, we talked about this, how I was like, and I also heard some new stats on Dave Ramsey.
Yeah.
But, so listen, let me chime in with this. Paul, we wanted to make sure Brady has noticed in the past that when we open the show without you knowing too much about the guest, it takes you about 15 to 17 minutes to make sure the guest is good enough for you to talk to them.
Do you really think that, Brady? Because it is going to my head, FYI. You are right about that. I'm sizing him up going, do I like this?
Well, at first, when I was watching some episodes, I just seen a few, and I was telling Seth I was worried. I'm like, I don't have some big crazy business or whatever.
I don't want that.
I feel like Paul's going to be like, who is this guy? What qualifies you to be on here?
So maybe that's the question needs to be answered. What qualifies you to be on the show? Tell us about your business and what you've been up to for the last decade.
Can I clarify real quick, though?
Go ahead, Paul.
I don't believe that everybody should have some ginormous business. I'm not impressed with ginormous businesses. I'm impressed with – I used to always say when I was a kid, even when I was in college, I used to always say, I'm far more impressed with the plumber that makes $100,000 a year than the corporate guy who makes $1 million a year who just followed the corporate way. Because going corporate, having a small business and making $100,000 a year is a difficult task. That is not an easy task. Going and working at a company and just working your way up is far easier. And all my corporate friends, if they wouldn't even watch this to begin with, but if they ever saw this, they said I'm wrong. No, they're not. I'm not wrong. I don't even care how much money you make. The fact that you just do something on your own that takes time and effort is very impressive to me. Now, do I want to know how much money you make in general so I can talk about the business? For sure, but I size up personalities from arrogance level. We can have a small business person that comes in that's completely arrogant. I know several like that. I don't have anything to do with them. I want to hear from down, and you seem automatically down to earth. This is the first time I've ever seen Brady in my life. First time I ever talked to Brady in my life. True, false? Very true.
True, yeah.
And you sat there, you're not a typical California elitist. I like it.
Very true, very true. I think, Seth had asked me a little bit about story and stuff like that. So, I didn't grow up with money at all. And so I'll just go through this real quick, but my parents got divorced when I was 6. My mom got addicted to drugs. She was a meth addict. And so I started to do not meth, but other drugs at the age of 12, flunked out of high school, didn't graduate, emancipated myself at 17, lived in my car, and never graduated high school, didn't go to college.
We had similar upbringings, basically.
Yep, just like you, Paul.
Yeah.
Wow.
So,
how old are you, Brady?
Yeah, I thought I was going to be, my brother is a plumber. My dad set tile. I thought that I was going to do construction for the rest of my life. And I was totally happy with that because I thought, you know what, I don't have an education. It pays good. It's hard work. But hey, you pay the bills with it. My dad paid our bills with it. And he's a great guy. He got remarried and is doing great. And my brother, perfectly fine lives doing construction. And so then when I started doing business and getting into a business, started graphic design business when I was 19, a lot of people were going like, but you didn't go to school for business. Like what qualifies you to, start a business? What do you know about stuff? I was like, I don't know anything. But I had worked at this barbecue restaurant that was owned by just a really horrible guy who was mean to his employees. And I thought, well, this guy seems to be like a complete moron. And somehow he started 2 businesses that were profitable. Nobody liked him. He ended up going out of business. However, I thought, well, if he could do it, I could do it, just because this guy doesn't seem any more emotionally intelligent or even book smart intelligent than me. And I think my dad just always gave me a confidence of like, you could do whatever you put your mind to. Don't let other people tell you you can't. And so I just started doing stuff. And then all along the way, people go, wow, you didn't graduate high school and you did this and you did that. And I said, well, yeah, so started photography. Huh?
How old are you now?
I'll be 35 next month.
Nice. All right.
So, so I've been living off of my own business income since I was 21.
How long you been a photographer?
Since I was 21. Yeah. So I did wedding photography from 21 to 28 full time.
Not yet. My dog's been telling me to be quiet.
Wait, is that Brady's dog? Brady, do you have a dog barking?
Yeah, they were responding over here. Hey guys, it's fine.
They're barking at each other.
And so, I started doing photography in 2007, actually. 2008 went full time, and then did that all the way up till I was 28 in 2013. And then I started this print manufacturing business. That was 7 years ago. And then I was doing both businesses because the photo business was always great. But what I didn't like about it was I was living off the income, so I couldn't put the cash flow back into the business because I needed it to live on. And I never wanted to do that with this other business. I wanted to give it the first, 3 to 5 years to just take all the money that came in and put it right back into the company. Also because obviously, I am a Dave Ramsey fan. I don't borrow money. So I wanted to build a business that could use its own cash flow for growth as opposed to lending. And then last year I transitioned.
I'm a big believer in as well, by the way, Seth.
Say it again, Paul.
I am a believer in that essentially, but from the personal standpoint, we'll get to Dave Ramsey later, I'm sure. Hey, question for you, Brady. How did you get into wedding photography? Like, were you always a photographer, or what happened there?
Yeah. So, I used to be an amateur skateboarder, and skating in contests and all over the, SoCal and all that stuff, and sponsored by, Vans and a bunch of other companies, just on the low, like amateur level. And when I was 19, I fell and shattered my arm in 13 places. I had to have a metal plate, 12 pins and 4 screws. And then they had to graft my hip to put into my arm because my arm had shattered into so many.
Did you fall head first into a bus?
No. I used to have really bad acne, and I was taking this acne medication that brutalizes your bones, and they tell you not to do anything extreme while you're on it. But I was sponsored in skating contests, so I didn't stop skateboarding. And then one day I just fell kind of hard, but not too hard. And it just went like a piece of glass.
So you are the Surgeon General's warning on there, like, do not do this.
Yes. So then I'm left-handed. And so I was in a cast. And so a friend gave me a bootleg copy of Photoshop. I learned graphic design. And then I had started going to church, and I met a guy who was a photographer, and he needed like business cards and some other stuff done. And so he was just really nice to me and said, hey, like, do you want this project? And so I said, yeah, sure. So I started designing for him, and he noticed that I was good at creative stuff. So I play 3 instruments.
Which one?
I took, so piano, guitar, and drums. And then I grew up taking dance, so tap, jazz, and ballet. And then I draw. Like I just like creative stuff. And so he's like, I know you like the really creative stuff, but you seem like more of a people person, and design is more just sitting behind the computer all day. So he came and took me out on some photo shoots and just said, I think you would really like photography. He kind of pushed me to try it, and he was right. I loved it.
You were a successful photographer. How many weddings did you do? And then when did you transfer to making albums? So in my career, I photographed a little over 700 weddings. And yeah, towards the end of my career, I was shooting weddings in Malibu with, $300,000-$400,000 wedding budgets and
what were you charging for that?
Like 12 to 15,000. Yeah. So, but I live in the Inland Empire, which is like really far away from Malibu. And so this might not be PC, but I used to always tell people, why would I live in LA where the rents are so and mortgages are so high? Like I take Malibu money back to the IE and it's like taking American dollars over to Mexico. Like I get triple what it's worth,
PC.
Well, just, I don't know, people talking about transfer rates or whatever. But, I bought my house when I was 26 in the downturn in 2011. I got it for $192. It's worth about $435 today. So my mortgage is only $736 a month. I have no debt, no credit cards, no student loans, no car payments, nothing. And so now with the income that has grown throughout the years, when I first got married with my wife, before we bought the house, I was only making like $1,200 to $1,300 a month. So now we haven't really changed our lifestyle. I drive like maybe a $2,500 car.
Tell Paul about that car. It's
So I drive a 2007 Toyota Yaris with 235,000 miles on it, and it has roll-up windows and manual door locks. I bought it for $6,000 with 95,000 miles on it. It's a giant dent in the side. The trunk looks like it's half open. People honk at me on the freeway all the time. But I don't care about the fact that I own a home and I have a great relationship with my wife and even have a car and don't live in it, is such a huge thing for me that like, I don't really care about stuff. And so I've been just, even once I made the transition over to my print business, just put that money back in the business. And we grew it from 18,000 in revenue in 2015 to 2019, we did about 435.
Oh, nice.
So 18,000 a year to 435,000 a year in about 48 months. And 2019 was actually a down year where we took the majority of our money, and rather than cycling it into customer acquisition, we had grown so much that we had to stop and grow capacity. So we had to put all our money into infrastructure for a year so that we could keep growing.
So when you said you were investing your money into customer acquisition, like how are you doing that? Through Facebook, or was it through you basically go through wedding photographers like Seth, or do you have a direct to consumer model as well?
No, so no direct to consumer model. That's in conflict with selling to our wholesalers. And so, or in my opinion, but I photographed weddings for 12 years. I used to speak at conferences and all that kind of stuff. So my network of photographers was already huge before I started this business. And I feel like you always say, like, get into a business that you know about. Don't try to leave this thing that you know everything about. Like the one of the last podcasts that you had done, a guy want to get a real estate, didn't know anything about it. It's like, put your money back into the thing that you know better than everybody.
I think there's a lot of growth potential. Yes, I do believe in, invest in other things if you want, but if you already have a lot of growth potential in your existing business, don't be afraid to put your money back in your business.
Yeah, so we put money back into our business like crazy. And I have a mentor who owns a pets business that does about $20 million a year. And I remember calling him years ago, talking about customer acquisition and marketing, and saying, hey, what should my marketing budget be? Like 10%, 15%?
What did he say?
He goes, what are you talking about? And I go, like how much, like what amount should I put in there? And he goes, Brady, if you had an ATM that every time you put in $1, spit out $5, how much of your money would you put into that?
Oh, Paul's gone. He's leaving the show.
And I said, all of it. And he goes, well, then you have your answer.
Hey, folks, I want you to hear this is a person with a $20 million business.
A year. Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's what I mean. It's like, let's go call that guy and just say, just thank him profusely for that advice. Cause that's probably the best advice you've ever received in your life. I mean, it's absolutely asinine when I hear about marketing budgets when, all right, go ahead. That's awesome.
So once he told me that, then I said, okay, I need to figure out.
Hold on a second, Brady. Seth, what were you saying?
Well, Paul, why don't you expand on that? Like, what do you see people doing that you're trying to coach our listeners, myself, people we meet? Like, what do you see people doing that's the opposite of what you're so proud of?
Our marketing budget is 5% of our revenue. Once we hit it, we're done. What the hell does that mean? Like you said, if you have an ATM that every single time you turn it on, you put your card in and get money out of it, when would you stop putting your money? You never stop.
Yeah.
Now, if you have to live, that's different. But even then, put how much money aside you want to live with, and all the rest of it should go to growth. That's it. That's just it. I mean, it's so counterintuitive to me that somebody would sit. What was his analogy, Brady? Can you say it again about the ATM?
Yeah. So he said, if you had a magic ATM that every time you put $1 into it, it spit out $5, how much of your money would you put into it?
Exactly. That's a great analogy. I'm gonna have to borrow that from him. Tell him to borrow that from him. But that's and whatever the number is, maybe if you put 1 in, you get 5. Maybe if you put 1 in, you put 2, you get 2. It doesn't matter. As long as you have an ROI that's good. When I say good, like put $1 and get $1.03 in a year, no. But you have to sit there and determine it. And everybody just sits there and says, well, I have a budget and my budget's this. And once I hit it, I'm done. It's like, okay, I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah. Our problem has been once I found the customer acquisition thing that worked that way, it worked so well. And the ROI was so huge that I'm in this constant flux of get on the phone, acquire business. We hit capacity internally with production. And then I have to redirect money that I would put towards customer acquisition into a $40,000 piece of equipment.
Which is still the same thing because you need that in order to grow your other customer acquisitions later. So right. I don't look at them as differences. I mean, yes, they are in the sense of you're not directly getting a customer, but you're investing so that when you go out and get more customers, you can take more capacity, correct?
Yeah, but I mean, in theory, like what you were saying in a previous podcast, like if we had just had unlimited capacity, I mean, we took our down year in 2019, but we were already on track to go from about 425,000 in last year to about 750 this year. And that's mainly because I pay myself a very reasonable salary, about 120,000 a year, even though the business gross profit's about 50%. So when we do I could pay myself 200. It's a good business because what's that?
Your wife work?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
She works in the pharmacy at a City of Hope Cancer Hospital. It's one of the top cancer hospitals. So she would be bored if she didn't work. But, we've gotten to a place where with her income and my income combined, we probably gross about $250 and we have less than $4,000 a month worth of bills. So,
So
my mortgage is only $736 and we have no car payments and no credit cards. So
are you a believer of fire? Are you a fire person?
Not directly, but we're the type of people who are bored if we're not working. And so I already told her, she knows like she could quit, and if I was a fire person, right, and I wanted to retire, my bills are so low. Just on this year alone, if I sold 100% of my company to a competitor, I could probably get $1.5 million and live off the interest. So
I guess my question is, why do you pay yourself $120? If you don't need the money, just live off your wife. If your wife makes another $120, just live off that.
So my wife makes about 65.
Oh, you're saying combined with all the profits from your business and hers, you guys would be about 250.
About 250. So like this year is a great example. Like we grossed 250. We probably netted like 160, 175. But then like we just put new windows in the house. That was $12,000. Like we're putting money into our house. Like we bought her another car, 17,000, but we're writing checks for this stuff. So, you know, we might write checks in cash for maybe $30,000 to $50,000 of the stuff in a year, but it's stuff like really practical. Like we still have tile countertops and we would love to do granite, but we know the more practical thing was to replace the windows. So, we're not in a hurry to look fancy or.
What was that, Seth?
Well, we go back to, you know, we've had podcasts where I couldn't understand why people would pay off their house early, and we brought Brady up the idea of like, you have said that, you know, if it helps people sleep at night and they want to not have debt, that's the most important thing. And I always think of Brady, a guy who, you know, lived in his car and now has this thriving business. You can see how he operates quite differently from maybe you or I, but it's still working. So as Paul would always say, there's multiple ways to skin a cat, wrong side cat.
Can I elaborate on that real quick?
Go ahead, Brady.
So I think I always tell people, I think everyone has a different definition of financial freedom. I think a lot of people's idea of financial freedom is that at some point they'll make enough money to where they can choose whether they work or not. And so they're trying to get to an income number. Mine, on the other hand, is more or less, let's say I pay my house off, like we are already at a place to where if both of us were let go from our jobs, we could pay all our bills and save just with unemployment money. So my life is basically, my freedom is already to the point where like I could lose everything and still keep everything I have. That feels more like financial freedom to me than every time I start to make more, go buy more. Like, how do you get to that place when you're always acquiring new bills as you acquire?
Listen, I agree with you 100%. I mean, it's so my chess coach, Matt, he reads the fire community. He's probably going to see this, and hopefully I'm not misquoting him. If I am, then he'll probably text me immediately and say you got it wrong. But, you know, one of the things I always tell him I don't like about the fire community is it's always this race to get to retirement. And my comment is, I don't like it when I hear people say, I can't wait to retire, because I said, then you're wasting today. That's kind of my thing, is like, then why are you doing this today? Well, because it gets good income. Okay, sounds good. You know, and I'm not saying that to pick on anybody. I'm just sitting there saying, and again, I'm not well versed in the fire community, so I get everything that I get from Matt. He'll send me stuff, but I just always hear people who are big on saving so fast, and I can't wait to retire. And the only thing I like about Matt is he's like, no, I'm not going to retire, but I'll scale back, and I'll be able to shift the time from having to work, and then it'll be like this. It'll just be okay, like you said. I mean, he and his wife are very frugal. They live a great life. Like, you can't see their life and think, oh, these guys are. You know, there's some people who just deprive themselves of everything in order to live. That's not the way to be, but they live comfortably. And to you, it's, hey, I want to be able to live my lifestyle on unemployment. That's pretty dope. Now, with that said, you wouldn't be able to get a new car. You wouldn't be able to buy windows to your house or granite. So your bills are $4,000 a month of regularly recurring bills. The other things you spend, you don't include in that budget, obviously. It's the one-off costs, like buying your car.
That's just an expenses thing to say that, like, you know, unfortunately, I was 23. So like I said, I'm just about to be 35. So I was 23 12 years ago in 2008. And I was doing the photo business, but I was still working part-time at the restaurant. And there was a guy who was in his 50s who was a real estate guy. And he applied and got a job there to just work the line where you scoop like beans and coleslaw and stuff onto people's plates. He was just getting minimum wage with no tips. I was a server. And I had to ask him, like, hey man, I'm not trying to be mean, but like, how did you end up applying for this minimum wage job at your age? You know, you seem like a really smart guy and all that kind of stuff. And he said, well, I was a real estate agent. And in this last boom, I just thought things were never gonna, I was making so much money. It was crazy. And he bought a house, he bought his kid a house, he bought a brand new $60,000 truck, he bought his kid a truck, all this stuff. And then he was just over leveraged. And then when it all went down, all of it got repoed. Him and his wife were sleeping at a shelter, and he could take he's like, I literally have lost everything I've worked for my entire life. And I just thought that's the definition of greed, wanting to grow faster than your cash flow can handle. So he wasn't borrow. You know,
he wasn't growing though. He was just spending. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah. I mean, wanting to be, I should say, I always think in business terms, but he wanted to be further along in his life with the stuff that he had.
Listen, I give him credit for two things. One, being open and honest with you about that. That takes a lot of humble pie to do. And two, going and getting a job like that. Like, I know many people who'd rather just be like, yeah, I'm not going to get the job. I mean, I'd probably be one. I don't know if I'd be one of them or not. I mean, it's easy for me to speculate, but it'd be hard to go sit there and go, yeah, I was making good money and all of a sudden I'm not anymore. And I'm going to go get a job, dumping rice and beans into people's plates for minimum wage. It's a pretty tough task to do. So I give that guy a lot of credit. Do you know what he's doing now?
No idea. But I was going to say, I told my wife 2 weeks in, we're shut down. Our manufacturing, we can't run. San Bernardino said $100,000 fine for any non-essential businesses that get caught operating, and they'll shut off the power and water to your building. So yeah, they're not playing around. And so a couple weeks in, I said, you know what, I might get this PPP thing that will be my full payroll. I might not. Do you want me to go apply for Uber Eats? Because I think the key to success in life is just never thinking that you're above something or someone or whatever. And to your point before about, you said LA, you didn't use the word pricks, but I will.
Not say pricks. California, LA. I said elitist, but I didn't say pricks. You can be a nice elitist, just to let you know. I'm a nice elitist, but go ahead. But
yeah, it's just this idea that things are beneath them. And I have a friend who's a teacher, and I value him as a person just as high as my friend who runs a business that does $20 million a year, because my buddy who's a teacher, if I got a flat tire at 2 a.m, I could call him and he would come get me. And that's as, if not more valuable to me than your ability to make money. Someone say, hey, look at Elon Musk. He's so great. Follow him. And I'm like, I'm in a healthy relationship with my wife. This guy's been divorced 5 times. I don't know if I want to copy his model. Because for me, life's just not about money specifically. However, I'm never retiring because I'd just be bored out of my mind. And I'm already happy with the money I make. The rest of the money that goes back into business, just because I think it's fun to grow it. And I like to come out with new stuff. And that's part of what's keeping me energized and entertained and excited to get up every morning.
Were you always like this, or did you find when you were younger that you wanted to have stuff? What was it like? Were you always just like this, or was it that change from 12 to 17? You're like, listen, I've been through hell. I don't want to do this. I mean, what's the? Because most kids want to have stuff. Whenever I go to my high school and teach, I always ask what's the definition of success. In every single class, they all say money, without fail, money. And I was the same way. I'm sure to some element I am, but maybe I was here before, and you might be here, and I'm here now. You know what I mean? So was it ever like that when you were a kid?
Yeah, I grew up skateboarding, and it was just, as long as I had my skateboard and my SUV full of buddies, and I had a crappy 1994 Chevy Blazer, and they'd all pitch in a couple bucks for gas. We'd go find a spot to skate, and we would have the best days. We'd laugh super hard, and it was just amazing. And I just thought, man, I'm having so much fun, and this doesn't have. I have a grandfather who owned a flooring business that at a certain point had 4,000 employees and was doing about $650 million a year. My mom's dad. And so he had 8 kids, and he gave them tons of money, always bailed them out of jail. A lot of them ended up in jail or with drug addictions. And he was never happy. He was always miserable. And so he achieved so much more than every entrepreneur that I've ever met in my life. And he was miserable. He had horrible relationships with his kids. And it broke him and his wife's heart to watch his kids become addicts and all this stuff. But he put way too much emphasis on the company, which, don't get me wrong, in the 50s and 60s, if you got 8 kids, his initial intention was just to provide, but then it became this all-consuming, look at me, look what I've done. And his identity became the fact that he was this big business owner, and people respected him because of that, because he grew up in a small pig farm town in Iowa.
What's your mom? Is your mom still around?
Yeah, she is. So she lives in a trailer park that's paid for by a trust from my grandpa. He passed away, but my grandma's still around, and so there's a trust set up for her that just kind of takes care of her stuff. But
are all your uncles and aunts around?
Yeah. Oh yeah. On my mom's side, they are. But you know, I mean, they're only in their 60s. So, and there's some of them who have kind of done okay, but a lot of them were, you know, when I asked him for money, he told me no, because he did that with his kids and it did not work. Yeah. You know, he bailed them out time and time again and gave them money for their homes and all this kind of stuff.
What did you ask him for money for?
When I moved out of my house because of my mom's situation and didn't have a place to stay.
Was he understanding, or was he kind of like, no, F you, I'm out?
No, he was super, super cool about it and basically just said, like, you don't understand, but if you carve it out on your own, you'll thank me for it later. And he was 100% right.
Paul, Brady cold called me.
I was going to ask you guys how you guys met.
He cold called me. I was with
customer acquisition. Back to the I cold call this guy, and he spends about $15,000 a year with me.
Yeah, so I was with one of his competitors, and I wasn't loving the non-personal connection I was getting. You know, kind of like a bigger business competitor, and so Brady called, and I think, Paul, one of these things is Brady's not really overly salesy with his business. And I think a lot of people respect him for that because it kind of keeps you on the DL, right, Brady?
Yeah. Yep.
So how'd you hear about Seth? Like, how'd you get his information and say, I'm going to call this cat?
So what I would do is I would go on Instagram and I would look at people who were already our customers and who they were following, right? And then I would go on some of those accounts, bounce around them, and then I would see, are they following our customers? And if they were following them, I'd call that customer and say, hey, you're following this guy, he's following you back. Do you know him? Are you friends? Oh yeah, we are friends. Or, oh no, I don't know. We just follow each other on social media. If they were friends, I would say, do you think he'd be a good fit? And then I would call Seth and say, hey, Seth, how's it going? You don't know me. My name is Brady. I own an album manufacturing company. I was a wedding photographer for 12 years. We have a really good mutual friend, you know, Chad de Blasio. I was just chatting with him on the phone and he was telling me about you. And he said that he thought you'd be a great fit. I asked him if Seth's the kind of guy who would just be okay if I called him. And he said, yeah, so I'm calling you. That was it.
So who does that Instagram stuff? Is that you who goes manually and looks through and all that stuff?
Yeah. And that was, you know, more towards the start. I still do. I don't like passive sales. I don't like to put out marketing and then sit and cross my fingers and hope that clients come call me and email me. I like to, I don't know if it's called outbound sales or whatever. Of course. But I like to look at who my customer base is, see where their network is. Sometimes every 6 months or so, I'll just call customers and say, hey, you know, is there anyone? And I called this guy, Chad, who's a customer of mine and a friend of Seth's the other day and said, hey, I know it's been a while since I checked in with you. Do you think there's anyone who you've talked to recently that's been a good fit? And he referred me to this guy, Miles Whit Boyer, Seth, if you know him.
I just met him.
Yeah, 60 plus books a year, great business. We chat on the phone, had a great conversation. He's all in. So that can be.
How can you so do you want to do more of that calling or do you find it to be too tedious? Like what's the reason?
My favorite part.
So how can you make that more efficient for you?
So I've got it to a pretty good thing. I usually only do sales about 6 weeks out of the year before we reach a place where I got to go back and build the warehouse, you know, to meet all that customer demand. So,
how many people do you employ, Brady?
Only 3.
Oh, okay. But you have contract workers working on the books and whatnot?
Yeah. So, and we were going to just about to make 2 new hires for 2020, a video guy to do a little bit more marketing, because now we have such a strong customer base that if we create some marketing content for our customers and let them share it, you know, we can less hunting around for me, but I kind of like it. I like the connection with the photographers. I did what they did for 13 years. And so it's always a fun conversation. I like the sales side of it, but I also like the, you know, as we have gotten a little bigger, I like the company culture and the training up my staff and
what
all
is
that kind of stuff.
Culture?
So
say it again, Paul. Say it again, Paul.
What is your company culture?
So it was not clearly defined for a long time. And so what I had to find was like, what are our core values? What are the things that we hire for and will also fire for? And so it's tough because you can say like X is a core value, but if one of your employees doesn't constantly do that, will you let them go for it? If not, it's not really like a core value. And then also too, are you not in that interview saying, how important is X, or framing questions that allow them to expose whether they have that value or not, you know?
Paul, why do you smirk when he says core values?
My brother has been a big believer in that. He just took over as, CEO about 8-9 months ago, and he created this core values. We have 5 of them. We all have plaques on our desk to talk about it. And it's just funny because I've been very anti-corporate. My brother's more corporate than I am. Ironically, he's 8 years younger than me, and he's more corporate than me. So that's why when you say the core values thing, I chuckle about that because, I make fun of them for it. Even though I agree with it, I'm glad they're doing it because I know that our goals need that to get to the next, to get to the levels we want to go to. It's just an ongoing joke in the company that I oppose everything that is corporate, even though I realize the importance of a lot of the corporate stuff. But I don't want to get stuck in cement all the time of like, we have these levels of bureaucracy, and that's always my fear about the corporate life. And the call.
Can I assure you? So I did training on this, and I think Seth was telling me, someone who's an EO.
Yeah, I know a few people yeah.
So they're the ones who teach like pretty big on core values and all that kind of stuff, right? But when I went to the core values day, one of them was a past EO member, a company called Atlassian, who's gone from 50 to 3,500 employees. And they have their core values, and they make t-shirts for everybody to wear in the office if they want. They don't have to wear them. But on day one, you get they have 7 core values, and you get t-shirts with each one of those on the front. One of the customers is no bullshit. And so it just says no bull and then a poop on the shirt. Another one is don't fuck the customer. So they don't need to be these.
Does that have a picture of a guy having sex and it says customer right there?
No, that one just says don't, and then F, and then like all the asterisk signs or whatever. And then it says the customer on that shirt.
My idea. Tell them, you can give them that and let them see if they can do that.
Yeah. But the core values don't need to be a rigid,
no, they're not. But it's just, I'm an extremist person. I like to take one idea that somebody says and go, okay, how can I take this to an extreme and make fun of it? And I do that. And my brothers, listen, I do believe, I realized over the last 3 or 4 years that for us to get to the level that I've always wanted to get to, it can't be done on the purely entrepreneurship, off the cuff all the time. That's something that was very hard for me to understand at first. And now I've completely embraced it. But my way of embracing it is, I'm going to have nothing to do with it. You tell me what it's going to be, I will honor it, I will do it, but I'm not going to create it because I don't think I'm the right person to create that. Now, when it comes to our core values, I was involved with that, but I didn't create them myself. I waited for everybody, all my partners to come up with their core values, and I looked at it and said, yeah, these seem about right to me.
Right. I think a good one, this is just my example or whatever, it would be like, okay, so let's say there was a point in time where you went to just go be the new Marcus Lemonis of investing in businesses. And somebody was going to manage the funds side of your business, you would have to communicate to them like, you're going to manage our money. You're going to put it to certain stocks. Like, we're value investors. And one of our core values is we don't put money towards speculation.
Yeah.
So that could be as simple as, okay, well then that person knows. And then let's say they do that. And then you go and you have a talk with them about why you're upset. You get to reference, hey, look, what's one of our core values? Don't invest money on speculation. So why am I upset about this investment that you made?
Yeah, no, listen,
because I made it on hype. Okay, well then you know why we're having this conversation.
This is how the conversation would go. You're fired. Do you want to know why? Okay, just want to make sure. No, I hear you. And there's by the way, part of the reason why I stepped down as CEO, Brady, was because I wanted to make sure that things that I truly believed I could control. So I went and said, I'm not going to cover everything. I'm going to cover the areas, the core values that I truly believe. Like that, would be it. Like, okay, no, I'm the head of investment in our company, and every investment goes through me at some point, and I call out the things I don't like because of that. So I agree with you. That's what I'm sitting there saying. I had to make a decision. And I'm not trying to say I'm humble, because I'm definitely not the most humble person in the world, but I'm probably more humble than I get credit for. I sat there and said, what's more important to me, being CEO or being able to manage the money the way I see fit? Because as you guys have seen from our podcast, the management of the money is the most important part to me. That is the managing the risk and managing the money is the most important part to me. And I have no problem with the buck stops here, where if we don't do it well, somebody can say to me, Paul, you did not do this well. Yes, you're right. Or Paul, this went really well. Yes, Paul, congratulations, you did a good job.
Brady, how's the business through this downturn, and how are you going to come out on the back end?
So we have cash saved. So, we're just doing our thing. We're looking at the PPP stuff to keep payroll going. If it doesn't work out, that's fine. No one's I already told everybody, like, you have jobs when we reopen,
Are you paying them as you're closed or no?
No. So, we can't work at all. We're manufacturing. Guys got to come in, they got to print prints, they got to bind them, they got to make covers, they got to take them in the press, clean them, and then ship them. And they can't do any of that from home. The only work that could be done from home right now is maybe customer acquisition or marketing. And my warehouse guys aren't going to be doing any of that. So I told them, like, if we can get payroll, you'll get payroll. If not, just file for unemployment temporarily. I told them what we're going to do is when we come back, we already have tons of customers saying, let us know as soon as you come back. Cause now I've got 5, 6, 7, 8 orders. I said, you guys, we are going to be absolutely flooded with work. And so when we come back, there's going to be this huge push. We may need to work 6, 7 days a week for the first month and a half. I said, and just know that if you'll step up with me so that because it is somewhat skilled work. We can't just bring someone in temporarily to get us caught up. I said, if you step up to the plate, there'll be overtime, there'll be bonuses, and hopefully all that will make up for any losses that we had while we were closed, But our customers have still photographed all the weddings they did last year that they'll order this year. And while they're at home, I'm still calling and doing acquisition every single day, so that even if the amount of weddings per customer has gone down by 20%, if I grow us by 20%, that we can still do.
Not to clarify real quick, but if you decrease by 20%, you have to increase by 25%.
Sure.
So just for your record, when you're calling, you're like, oh, I lost 20%, but I gained 20%. You're still 4% short. However, just wanted to clarify that. It's a common confusion, but Paul's a prick.
Our goal is to grow 80%. So and I could be saying this wrong. So our goal is to go from 425 to 750 this year.
Oh, wow. Good for you.
Yeah. Because like I said, last year, 2019, it wasn't that we couldn't get more customers, that we needed to spend money on infrastructure. So we built all this infrastructure basically to be able to get us to 1 million. However, I'm kind of going up to, I want to go up to 750 and then see, like my grandpa used to tell me, like, it's one thing because when I built my business went from 18,000, 60,000, 18 to 60, 60 to 175, 175 to 298, 298 to 425. And so he's like, well, it's easy to grow 100% when you just go from 100,000 to 200,000. You don't even have to hire anybody. He's like, he goes, but like for him, when he's like, if we went from 50 million to 100 million in 12 months, he goes, I'd need to hire 200 people. And when you're throwing that many new people into structures, you're setting yourself up for some screw up. So I don't know now at the size that we're out, what the right amount of growth is. We're still so small that I felt like 80% would be fine, because capacity wise, it only adds maybe one or two more team members max. But I'm really careful not to get over my skis when it comes to growth, because I'm only 34 years old. And, if the business does $1 million a year, I'll make $500,000, and I already don't need as much as I make now. So there's no reason to rush
So by the way,
I can tell people my business does $1 million a year. I don't care about that, you know?
Just to clarify,
Sure.
earlier you said I think you said your gross margin was 50%. Are you saying your bottom line 50%? Like if you bring $1 million in, to your pocket would be $500,000? After rent, employees, cost of goods sold, everything would be $500,000?
So I'll say this, which is it's not 50% once you factor in my payroll. But if I add
the payroll back in.
Right, yeah. If you don't factor in my payroll, it's 50%. Now, I do work with a co-manufacturer. The average gross profit is 72%.
But so remember one thing, gross profit though is direct cost for that product. So
and I know I don't say all that right, but
it's fine. But I just want to make sure I'm understanding it that way.
Yeah, if we do 65,000, or let's just say 60,000 in a month, I'm going to spend probably about 21 of that on, or maybe even 18 of that on cost of goods, leather, paper, prints, all that stuff, and the rest is going to go towards rent, payroll, and everything else. And then so we'll spend about 30 out of that 60. Wow. Yep. But beauty industry is like 90% margins. They'll take a little cup in a jar, you know, and that jar costs them 11 cents, and the material inside for the makeup costs about 32 cents, and they sell it for $22, you know? So every industry's got their different margins. However, the higher margin ones tend to be more competition. And then you have your decently margin service businesses like photo industry, but the barrier to entry is so low. So competition's insane. This is in a weird place where it's super niche. The margins are good, but the barrier to entry is probably, let's say 250, 300,000. And so not my photographers who are my customers aren't going to go become my competition. It's too expensive.
So what is your goal for the business when you're 40? Like, is there a revenue goal, or you just take it a year at a time?
So I'd love to get into this topic. I am typically the type of person that looks at ROI and customer acquisition costs, and I try to balance it with capacity and say, okay, we've put enough money into capacity. Let's take 5,000, put it into customer acquisition, get those customers, get their profits, redump that, and hopefully we get to X. The only person, and I think this is a topic because you talked about atomic habits and goals and not having goals and all that BS or whatever. I don't communicate the goals to the team. So I have goals, but they're arbitrary in my mind because me personally, I don't care if I hit them or not. However, I read a good book called It Doesn't Have to Be Crazy at Work by Jason Friedman, who's the founder of Basecamp.
Great. By the way, did you read Rework?
Oh yeah, that's one of my favorite books.
Two great books right there. Two phenomenal books right there.
And so, man, his book Remote would be very beneficial for people right now.
Yeah, somebody. I don't know if I got that. Somebody got me that book. I haven't read it yet though.
So in It Doesn't Have to Be Crazy at Work, he talks about, you know, if you set a quarterly goal of 15% and then the company hits 12, if your team is really bought into the success of the business and all that kind of stuff, they're going to feel bummed out. 12 is an incredible gain. And if you wouldn't have just put it 15, nobody would be sad. If you just said, hey, let's grow, and then you grew 12%, everybody would be celebrating because it's great growth. But because you set the goal at 15 and hit 12, now people are bummed out.
So I get what he's saying there. And like I've said before, I don't agree with everything they say in those books, but a lot of it, I mean, people, if you're an entrepreneur or even want to, read those two books. They're great books. I still don't agree with that because I have found in my experiences that we set the bar, whatever bar we set, we'll either hit or get a little bit. We rarely crush the bar. Do I understand the idea behind not setting goals? I do understand that whole methodology. I still like, I like what you're saying though. I don't. So how do you get your team members, if they're not involved in your goals, how do you get them to believe in the company long-term?
So I just tell them that, you know, the goal here is that I'm going to grow the business, and to my ability to grow the business and your ability to do your job well, you will have a brighter and brighter future the longer you work here. Because I really feel like that's what a lot of people are missing, especially in a warehouse position that doesn't seem like it's going anywhere, you know? And so at first I thought once I get to $1 million in revenue, like I'm fine with that. I don't want to grow anymore. I don't want more customers. What I realized later was if I do that, then I'm locking my team into a career that doesn't have the opportunity to move forward. And so now it's more about giving them the opportunity to maybe step up as COO, you know, as opposed to just warehouse manager, and then get another warehouse manager underneath them so that I'm fostering careers as opposed to just where I want to be, you know? And I will say that me personally, I do have goals because like when I was setting the goal to go from 425 to 750, it's like, okay, well, we make X amount of revenue per customer. How many new customers do we need? In what period of time do we need to do it? If it costs this much to get a customer and I want to do it in X period of time, how much money do I need to allocate for customer acquisition on a monthly basis? And how many people do I need to acquire to know I'm on track? And then I track that and I can see by month 2, oh man, we're behind on, 17 new customers a month. So unless I step up sales and get us back on track, we're not going to hit our goal. But you can't get to where you're going, or you can't make a map to where you're going to get to if you don't even know where the hell you're going in the first place.
What is your cost per acquisition? What is your cost per acquisition?
So it's tough because if you looked at my own labor, right, how do you factor that? What am I worth per hour, right? However, the books cost a certain amount, and let's say that the average book cost to the photographer is, let's say, $600, right? Well, that cost me in material and labor $300. And so what I found is that a lot of photographers, the reason they don't switch to album companies is when they're deciding that they want to leave and they haven't figured out where they want to go, they don't have enough money to spend $200 or $300 on a sample because they get those at a discount from 10 different companies just to pick the one they want. So they try to go to trade shows and so on. However, trade shows could cost upwards of $60,000 as a vendor. So I get them on the phone. I say, hey, I heard you're interested in switching, or I heard about you from a friend. Here's what I'd love to do. I know, because I was a photographer, that the number one thing about getting new samples is they cost money. So I'm just going to give you yours for free, but you got to order it in the next 2 weeks because I can't just have print credit, $600 at a time, 10 people, 6,000. I just can't have it floating out there forever. So if it's fair enough, I give you $600 in credit. You can try out the book, get it to your house. If you don't like it, throw it away. I don't care. My theory is you're going to get it, love it, and switch.
What percent who get the book stay with you?
95%. Yeah. But I'm picking people pretty solidly, and I'll weed people out on the phone. If they don't have the volume, if they want stuff that we can't offer, I'll just tell them right there, we're not a good fit, and I won't offer them the sample.
Say again, Paul.
What volume do you want to hear from somebody?
15 books a year or more. Typically our books, like I said, are about $600. Let's say $500 for easy math. So it'd be about $7,500 in sales per customer. So 10 new customers is another $75,000. However, sometimes I'll get a guy like this guy, Miles, 60 books a year. It's a $30,000 account. I met a guy at the last trade show, 400 books a year. It's $200,000 a year account. And so I have to be careful because I could be at a trade show and one big customer could go, we're all in, we want to come on board. And then we got to grow, 22% overnight,
So what about when you want to grow, it's machinery, right? Mostly machinery?
So there's a couple things. So like we just put a ton of money into our e-commerce back end of our site. Customers wanted to be able to have their own dashboard where so they could see all their past orders. And this is something a lot of our competitors were offering. So we spent months and a lot of money in web development so that our e-commerce ordering system and back end system could be way more robust for what people needed. Because we want to sell to high volume studios, they need clarity and organization from the company that they buy from. And before we were doing a lot of things like forms and Dropbox and stuff like that. So sometimes it's that where we need to step up on that. Other times it's equipment and one new printer's $90,000, a creaser folder machine maybe $45,000. All the pieces of equipment purchased are really expensive. However, it's such a great time right now because my subcontractor, they grew like crazy in the last downturn. 8-9 companies went under, and then this equipment is so specific that the resale on it is horrible. Machines that I bought when I first started that were entry level machines that I bought for, let's say, 20,000, I was only able to get about $3,000 for when I went to sell them. It's really, really, really bad. But in a downturn, it's even crazier. So he had bought a printer that's normally about $92,000 for 21,000 in the last downturn. But then when he went to the guy's shop, he said, "You know what?" He goes, "They're going to come lock the doors tomorrow. If you can put this laser, $25,000 laser on the truck, you can have it." They're filing bankruptcy, closing up shop. So, another company went bankrupt about a year ago, and they were liquidating equipment for like 8 to 10 cents on the dollar, something like that.
How old was the equipment?
Not too old, maybe 4 or 5 years, which is young in our industry.
How long does your equipment last you? Like, how long will it last you?
About 12 to 15 years.
Another question, a little bit different from before, going back to before. Every 100 phone calls you make, how many new clients do you get from that?
Because I do the research ahead of time, I would say probably 70%, 7 out of 10.
But you're still slow. You're still almost, you got to put the brakes on at times, right? Because flipping the switch and getting more clients can alter the.
Well, we could have a big initiative where we're going to onboard X amount of people, right? And so I get 8, 9, 10, 11 customers, and they're all kind of in that one range. Then I go to a trade show, I pick up 15 of them. Ben, he hasn't switched over, but Ben from Giphy's 115 weddings a year.
Yeah.
That other guy was 400 weddings a year. And so we could get over, because we're so small, we could get over our skis with a new big customer pretty easily. Because when all that stuff comes in, like for example, I buy boxes from China, right? They take 2 months I have a shipment coming over right now, right? And I buy maybe like 1,000 boxes at a time. And then we try to wait until it's the right time, so we're not just tying up tons of money in inventory, just sitting there. But knowing that we have to order ahead of time. Well, we got a boudoir photographer last year, and we weren't selling a lot of 8x8 albums. Only when we sold parent albums. She comes on and starts ordering 15, 20 a month and just wrecks our 8x8 inventory. Like we have all this forecasting done for the last 7 years. She comes in, only orders that one smallest size, and her volume was through the roof. And so then we had to completely readjust, and overnight 8x8 inventory went from 3% of our monthly volume to 21% of our monthly volume, because she referred us to more friends who kept wrecking our 8x8 inventory, which was great. But it could all shift pretty quickly,
Paul, have you heard other businesses have these kind of strange sounding problems of growth?
I mean, pretty much every business has that, but the thing that's interesting to me is the margin. I mean, the margin's pretty solid. How many customers do you have? Like, how many individual customers do you have?
112.
Okay, so the average one did $3,700 last year. Is that accurate?
So that's current customers. That's before end of last year. So I would say we had about 82.
Okay.
With 425,000 revenue. So I would say somewhere in between 55.
Okay.
It would be 75 plus, but I've got some friends who maybe only order 1 or 2 a year, and I'm not going to tell them they can't buy books from me. How many customers like this exist in the U.S.? Thousands.
What's thousands mean? 2,000, 10,000, 100,000?
So there are, let's say there are 3 or 4 big companies in our industry that sell exclusively to photographers. And they have upwards of 40,000 customers doing anywhere between 2 and 300 million a year.
No, I meant how many Seths are there in the world, in the country?
Oh, people doing, 20, 30 books a year, like my type of customer.
Yeah.
I mean, to be honest, Paul, I could probably build my entire business to $1 million a year with just photographers from LA.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So in Los Angeles County, there are 26,000 businesses registered as wedding photographers. 26,000. I would say 10% of those are probably 20, 30 weddings a year, and that would be 2,000 customers. I only have 100.
How many? What's the geographic location of your customer? Like Seth's in Ohio, right?
Sure.
Yes. What percent are in LA and what percent are outside?
Pretty small percent is LA based. I would say maybe 10%, which may not sound small, but the fact that we're based out here, it seems small. Whereas we have maybe 22% in just New Jersey alone.
Wow.
Yeah. So, but yeah, it depends. So for example, 2 months ago, we got a big customer, or not a big customer, but a big name customer who lives in Oregon. And she has 60,000 followers on Instagram. She gets a book from us, posts, and now the amount of Oregon customers we have has gone from 2 to 13.
Wow.
So somebody in Ohio, like Seth, comes on board. Seth gets me Chad, Seth gets me Dirkworks, Seth gets me, all these other people. And then other people who live in like Toledo, Ohio, who Seth doesn't even know, but they follow him, come to us. Swatch Studios, Lauren and Beth Noes, Adore Photography. I've got awesome customers in Toledo who just follow Seth and Beth. And when he would post about us, they would contact us. And we do get a lot of leads from just our customers post, and then they come to us. Not every single one of my sales is me going and hunting people.
Do you know Seth once told me he didn't think cold calling worked?
Yeah, he's crazy. Well, Paul, I used to work at LA Fitness, and I had to call 100 people a day.
How'd that go for you?
It was horrible. But I learned how to do it. And what worked was these people had just signed up for the gym, and they were now being cold called to be sold personal training by me. And so I used to call them and go off the script that LA Fitness would provide. And I would say, hey guys, and I try to sell them on features and benefits. They just signed up for the gym. They barely just committed to this. They're not going to also make another commitment to that. So what I started doing is I would call people. I'd get them on the phone. I'd say, hey guys, my name is Brady. I'm from LA Fitness. They're making me cold call you right now, and I know you're super not pumped about it, but could you give me 15 minutes so I don't get yelled at by my manager? So right away, I'm addressing the fact that I'm annoying them by calling them at home. And because of that honesty, they would go, you know what, man? Sure, go ahead, do your thing. I said, look, I know you just signed up for this. They want me to call and pitch you personal training. I highly doubt that you want a personal trainer. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. I know from looking at your records here, you come in like 3 days a week. Typically you come in on Wednesday. It would really, really help me out if one of those Wednesdays, I could just walk you through a workout, because I have to walk X amount of people through a workout for a quota. Otherwise I'm going to get let go. And I'm not telling you to be responsible for my job, but I think it'd be a lot of fun and there's no harm, no foul. And they'd go, yeah, that's fair enough. I go, great.
It was a free workout for them to try it out.
Yep.
And then of those people, how many did you close after that? Like how many people, what percentage did you close after that?
Well, here's the thing. In the beginning, the gym had just opened. And so tons of people were converting. But by the time you get the gym kind of full and the amount of new members come on board, 8-9 months in, everyone who's working out there has either already been pitched personal training and said no, or signed up for a personal trainer. So the numbers just start going like this. So all those gyms, if you can get in right away and you're good at sales, you can make $10,000, $12,000 a month in commission. But then once the gym's been open for, let's say, a year and a half, it's just super cutthroat. Their turnover is like 80%. It's brutal.
Paul, what do you think of this story?
I think it's wonderful. I think it's great. Why are you smiling, Seth?
I mean, Brady's been a good friend of mine for a while now, and he's been a super fan of the show. And
I love it.
What was that, Brady?
I said, I love it, man. It's so good. I go back and watch older episodes, and it's cool to see how Seth's evolved. But then also too, like, okay, so I'll say this, right? Like, I'm a Dave Ramsey fan, right? But I have a business credit card because when I went to go lease a building, they were like, you don't have business credit. And I can't buy the building. So I was screwed. And I realized, okay, there's a flaw in this program, right? So I got a business credit card, and now my whatever line of credit on that credit card is like 60,000. And I just pay for all my inventory with it. And then the day after I pay it, I pay it off the next day. I don't carry a balance. I'm not looking to use that money for 30 days to leverage it, you know, for whatever reason. I don't have all my suppliers on net 30 or net 60. I don't try to play around with my money like that. But I've also been a big proponent of the emergency fund. And emergency fund is just expenses, right? You're going to barf. Okay.
Wait, for business or for personal?
For both. Right. Okay, but for personal,
for business, good for you. For personal,
so for personal, right. And this is, let me praise you real quick here. Right. So for personal, I've always thought, well, what does it matter? Right. Like, let's say we're taking in $10,000 a month and we're investing 15% of that into IRAs and whatever. Although we may live on like $4,000 a month, if we cut it, we could live on like 1,500, maybe.
How do you live on $1,500 a month? My dogs don't live on $1,500.
Outside of the $736 for my mortgage.
That include taxes.
I've got about another $1,500 in groceries and cell phone bills and health insurance and whatever, you know. So,
Paul, your dogs don't live on 1,500.
Hey guys, I'm gonna put you guys on a budget right now. Okay, it's $500.
So, Paul, we only keep $12,000 as an emergency fund.
Oh yeah, because you spend $4 a day. Of course, you don't need $12,000.
Right. So the goal is not to have a big giant emergency fund. That's crazy. He does, and he always clarifies. People, stop thinking you need to save 3 to 6 months of income. You know, it's not like we make $10,000 a month and so we have $60,000 sitting in a freaking savings account doing nothing for us. That would be ridiculous. What's our bare bones, got to keep the lights on expenses, food budget cut down, not driving that much, cut our car gas bill in half? What would that number be? Times that by 3 to 6. Set that away. But now, doing the research after you mentioned it about no penalty withdrawals from your IRA or 401k, it's like,
well, I didn't say no penalty. I said you can borrow from 401k, and I said worst case scenario, take the effing penalty and just to me, if it's a matter of bankruptcy or if it's a matter of like paying the bills or not, just take the freaking penalty. Like the chances.
Now, I understand why he says it though, right? Because it's like, so let's say you're just getting started, you paid off your debt. Right, you got a 22% interest card. Pay that thing off before you start saving money, because that's 22% return when you pay it off. Right, you talk about it all the time. And so then let's say you're going to save this $12,000, and you do it in, let's say January of 2020, but you put that money in the 401k rather than in the savings account. I think his thing is just like, it's such a small amount of your income and you're going to be putting so much more money towards retirement. Like we're going to only keep 12,000 forever in that account. And yet we'll put 20 to 30,000 in retirement accounts year after year. That it's like, why put that 12 grand at risk that it could get cut in half in the market? And then now you need that money to keep the lights on, but you only have a month and a half worth versus 3 months because you wanted to try to make.
So I wrote a whole article about this. It's not as simple as Dave Ramsey's saying.
Oh, for sure.
In front of me, it's because remember, if the typical person saves 10%, it's going to take them a good 6-7 months to. The bottom line is, I ended up doing the math once before and going, oh my, it's actually a 7-figure mistake. But either way, again, this is still going against the whole. If it makes you sleep at night, I'm not going to argue it ever. But I don't want you coming to me later saying, I'm looking for retirement. Like, well, you wanted to save for the 1 in 1,000 chance that you're destitute and you're broke and all. It's like, come on, let's be reasonable here. But again, I am glad that he talks about your bare bones expenses because,
Right. You don't want to say, I mean, like you're saying, like, let's say you saved 10% of your income. It would take you a long time to get 3 to 6 months of your income in the bank. However, to get 3 to 6 months of your expenses in the bank, if you're already at baby step 3, which is you've paid off all your debt, shouldn't be that much money that you're actually.
Well, if it's 10%, then you're spending 90%. So saving 10% takes you 9 months to save. Either way, I get what you're saying, Brady. I don't want to poo-poo on Dave Ramsey too much. Because guess what? Our internal, my brother and I, our internal commitment to our company is no operating businesses besides the real estate will have debt unless it's to us. That's our thing. So we agree with you. I'm a big believer in, I don't want to have any debt in the companies except for any debt that we put into a company ourselves that says, hey, we put 50 grand in here to do something. We want it back at some point. Other than that, we have no debt on any of our businesses, and we're proud of that. Real estate, we actually have very reasonable debt on our real estate. We're under, I think our entire portfolio is probably at 50%, if that, of real estate debt, which bothers me. I want to have 65 or 70% because we realize that we're good operators. We can go make 20% returns by having low debt. What the fear is that a lot of people need the leverage to go make the big money, and I don't like that. You know what I mean? Like, I just got pitched a fund today where they use a lot of debt to make the returns. I'm like, I don't want to do that. You know what I mean? Have they proven they can make a lot of money? Yes, but they also haven't seen a big down market. So I'm not saying, I want to make sure that, it does get confusing with me at times. One, sleeping at night's the most important thing. If you're okay, and you are the kind of guy who's like, if I have 5 million instead of 8 million, I'm gonna be okay. Great. Perfect. Great. Good for you. But I also believe in times like this have proven, keep your business debt low. If you're a good operator, you'll be able to grow without a lot of business debt. That's it. I mean, how many companies do I know operate literally on a credit line? I'm like, oh, that's so stressful. Like, how do you operate that? You know what I mean? It's just like, my brother and I argue about a credit line because we use our credit line to buy real estate. My brother wants to pay it off all the time. I go, Mikey, we argue about this because he wants to pay it off. I'm like, well, Mikey, it's equity in our real estate. We borrow from here to pay here. And I'm not going to get into the whole financials of it, but I do agree with you, Brady. I'm glad you have no business debt. Your personal debt even, I mean, your mortgage, what do you owe on your house?
$132.
Yeah, I'm surprised. I thought you were going to tell me like $4,000. I was going to laugh at you or something like that. But
so the goal was, the goal was to get about 175 by the end of 2020 into the bank, and then cut a check for 132, and not wait till we get to 132, cut a check and have $0 in our savings account. It makes no sense. So we wanted to get it to where even once we wrote the check for the house, we'd still have 30 to 40,000 in there. Just because there are some other things that we want to do. We need to replace our AC unit, some things like that. So we had asked ourselves last year, how much do we need to set aside to cut that check for the house? Just because we have looked at other properties and we knew this downturn was coming. It was so obvious with just, it went like this, and then it just had been going like this for so long. Like, it's gotta crap at some point. And I told Seth, I said, I know this thing's going to turn. I told him this in October. I said, everyone I'm talking to, pharmacy techs at my wife's work who make $60,000 a year, were saying that they were buying 2 and 3 rental properties to do Airbnb. And I'm like, but if these don't rent out, can you afford the mortgages? And they're like, well, no, but why wouldn't they rent out? Now they're losing all those. So, how
much do you have right? And if you might be asking personally, if you want to get to 175, where are you at?
121.
What's the interest rate on your home?
3.
Oh, I assume. Yeah, 3.
What is it?
3.25.
Paul, what do you think about that?
So, I was going to make a joke and say, Brady, instead of doing that, instead of writing a check for 130,
sure,
give me the 130. I will give you a mortgage on 2.5 of my houses in Cleveland and a personal guarantee, and I'll give you 5%. Now you're making a 1.7% spread with a personal guarantee of somebody who's worth 30 times more than that. You know what I mean? Like I look at that going, to me, that 130, what could you put that in your business in terms of being able to, like what, if you put all the 130 towards expanding your business, how much revenue could you do a year?
So I'll answer that with just saying like, I've already done all that math. I asked you that question the other day. At what point do you stop putting money in your business where every time I give away a $300 book, I get $7,500 in revenue? I'm turning, and the LTV, like I gave Seth a $300 book 3 years ago. He spent $7,500, $10,000, $15,000 year after year after year with me. My LTV versus my CAC, customer acquisition costs, sometimes can be $300 to $80,000. So my return on investment for customer acquisition is so ridiculous that it wouldn't make sense not to put every penny I ever have into the business. But at what point,
pay your house up.
Take a portion of that, you know, if I make $750,000 and I net 325, at what point do I not just take 90 grand of that and write a check for my house? Like I'm already making, I never thought I would even own a business. I thought I was going to have to do brickwork my entire life. And so if it makes my wife comfortable, and, you know, Dave Ramsey has this quote in the beginning of the show where he says, "Welcome to the Dave Ramsey Show, where debt is dumb, cash is king, and the paid off home mortgage has taken the place of the BMW as the status symbol of choice." So some people are going to say, "Oh man, I just got a new Tesla." And I'm going to go, "That's awesome." And they'll be like, "What are you driving?" And I'm like, "Oh, this little shitty Yaris." And then they're going to, at some point, if we get the mortgages, they'll be like, "Oh, my house is paid off." Right? So my Tesla is my paid off house. And even though it may not make sense, for me, it's more of to have my house paid off when I'm 35, a $500,000 house with a business that's worth over $1 million. Like it's so far beyond where I ever thought I would be, that it doesn't bother me that I know that I'd make way more money putting that 130 into my business than it does to pay the house off.
All right. Fair enough.
Sorry.
No, don't apologize. I mean, that's probably the best answer I've heard for it. I mean, it's like, listen, I didn't think I was going to be here. I mean, I always think the same thing to me. Like, what if we have this football game, Dynasty Owner. Let's say hypothetically hits it big and I sell it for $500 million. And all of a sudden I have $500 million more than I thought I was going to have in a few years. I'd be like, yeah, what the fuck do I care? I'll go do this. Like, I thought it was going to take me 10 years to get $500 million. I got it in 2 years. Like, what do I get that idea. Now, granted, it's a few extra zeros, but I get what you're saying in that sense. But you're still obviously in growth mode is why I'm asking that question. Like, you still right now that struggle, but you still think to yourself like, okay, what do I need? Like you right now said you expand your business so you can do $1 million in revenue. How much would you have to invest to be able to do $2 million in revenue?
So, I mean, it's as simple as, you know, my average customer spends $7,500 a year. So I would just take $1 million. I'm doing the math on my phone, divided by 7,500 is 133 customers times $300 in acquisition, 40 grand. But then in infrastructure.
That's what I mean. Infrastructure, really.
Maybe 125? No, maybe less than that. Maybe 90. So
90 plus.
Let's just call it 150. So I could put 150 in and grow to another $1 million. Yep.
How about we do this? I will pay off your house for you. I own now everything above 750 on your business.
So here's the problem, right? Is that
wait a second. I will pay off your house for you. I own everything. I'm sorry, everything above $1 million I own.
What do you think, Brady?
So here's the problem, okay?
Call your wife now. The house is gone.
I'm 34 years old, right?
Yeah.
If the business does not get to $1 million a year in revenue by the time I'm 40, who cares? It doesn't matter.
I know, and that's why I'm trying to come up with both our goals. You want your house paid off, and you don't care if it goes above $1 million. I want the cream and to pay your house off. We all win. Everyone wins here.
Oh, so Brady,
But
hold on.
I'm saying eventually I'll get there. So there's no reason for me to, now don't get me wrong. I've thought about this before, which is like, man, if I just sold, let's say 20% of the business, and the business is at, 350 in profit a year, we could call it, let's say $1.5 million valuation. I could sell 20%.
By the way, this is a personal opinion. That seems like pretty aggressive. Where'd you get that? I mean, that's 5 times on before paying yourself. Somebody would take out your salary in there because somebody have to run it. So you're probably looking at more like 250. But anyways, go ahead.
But that's also based on only 1 year of not 100% growth.
And that's why also a little bit lower because like, hey, you're kind of a young company. It's kind of hard to. Yes, you have a lot of growth potential, but you also have a lot of reverse potential. But either way.
Yeah.
Seth, go for it. Seth,
well, Brady, Paul had asked me a few months ago, can't you just make a company make your own books? That's what, Paul, you said that in the past.
By the way, I wasn't saying it as a like F Brady thing, but Seth was telling me how much he paid for the books, and I was just like, why don't you just buy your own printer and do it yourself?
So I'll tell you this just for like reference, right? So the printer he would need, if he even got a used one, would cost about $50,000 because they're normally about 92 brand new.
And don't worry, we're not starting the business behind your back.
I know, but you need that. You need a silver halide recovery machine to recover the silver out of the paper. You need tons of EPA regulated zoning in your building. And then what is he going to hand stack all the books? Like he doesn't do enough volume for him to go spend $130K to start an album company so that he can save 50% on the 20 books he buys a year.
Yeah, but when he makes those cold calls that finally do work. That was my thought before I knew anything about you. But either way.
Yeah, I mean, if he wants to come compete, he's welcome.
No, I'm not going to do that. We're not here to take our guested ideas and go wrong with it.
I always tell people, because some people have been like, what made you think that you could do all this stuff, in terms of just where I came from to like what I'm doing today? Which I don't see to be this big crazy thing, but other people are like, if you went from living in your car to running a business that does $1 million a year without even a high school education, like that's substantial. And I just say, I think it was the skateboarding because there are so many lazy business owners out there. Whereas I came from a profession where it was push yourself, fall down huge sets of stairs, break your arm, skate with a cast on so that you don't lose what you were gaining up until that point, get that cast off, keep going, get broke off even worse, have to take 3 months off. Like the level of aggressiveness that I had for 12 years in that realm. Once I got into photography, I went full time in 18 months because so many people are like, oh my gosh, I'm having to edit today. I'm like, you're at home drinking coffee in your pajamas. Like, have you ever gone on a construction site and done brickwork from 6 a.m?
Paul has
2 hours in traffic, and like, this is the easiest job I've ever had in my life. And not to say that running a business is easy, but part of skateboarding is fall 100 times or more just to learn one new.
My brother used to be a skateboarder, and all of his friends, I think, are the biggest losers ever. So I don't think it was skateboarding that did it. I would never hire those kids to do anything. In fact,
there's a lot of drugs in that community too. Yeah. But
and the one kid was a photographer, and I hired him for one job. He never did anything. I want to kill that kid. I'm just like, F these losers. So you're the first successful skateboarder besides Tony Hawk I've ever heard of. I'm just gonna tell you.
It ingrains in your brain though that falling down or failing is just part of learning, and that there doesn't need to be kind of like emotional response from it, and that you're willing, and my type of person is willing to go through a lot of pain for what's on the other side. Cause it's like, man, I want this so bad. I'll break my freaking arm in half to get it, and just so many people just don't have that drive. They want to start a business because they heard it was easy and they heard it was the easiest way to make money.
What told them it was easy?
So you know how many people are saying, oh, you just start a business on Amazon, somebody else, you drop ship, make $1 million a year. And it's like, yeah, with 6% margins and you can make 60 grand.
Drop ship's the biggest scam ever, by the way, because it's like, it's so competitive because everybody talks about drop ship.
My friend's pets business only has 10% net profit. I mean, they're at 20 million, so it's $2 million a year. And they both pay themselves a good salary.
Whenever I hear about people's businesses, I assume the profit's somewhere between 10 and 20%.
Sure.
Listen, you have a very high margin business. It's not very typical. And, obviously understanding your numbers better with financials in front of me would be a lot different.
I could totally be calculating it wrong. But once again, I am not your highly educated stuff. I just know that
you don't need to be highly educated. But you might be calculating it wrong just because you never learned to calculate it. I don't think you're wrong, by the way. I'm just sitting there saying, maybe it's not 50%, maybe it's 40%. The bottom line is it's still pretty good. And that's what matters. You know what I mean? You're not like Microsoft who has freaking like 70% margin or 65 or whatever. That's because it's software and all that stuff. But I just always, I think to myself, and this is the way I've been ingrained in my head of, and again, it's all personal opinion. So what I'm going to say is irrelevant. I'm not going to say it. It's just, I get it. Listen, I've also changed though. I was telling my brother and my girlfriend the other day, I was like, I literally used to have the goal of being the richest person in the world. And that was legitimately no, I'm not kidding. I remember saying to myself, like, okay, if I end up in the top 10, it's not bad. Like that legitimately was my goal. And now my goal is not even close to that. In fact, I almost don't want it because I see the attention it garners and I know my personality of like, if people criticize me that didn't even know me, that would directly affect me. I'd be like, they don't even know who the F I am. Like, why are they criticizing me about this one? Granted, here I am criticizing everybody else, so I'm an asshole. But I'm saying it from the standpoint of I understand what you're saying to a certain level. I've decreased my desire of going, listen, if I become the richest person in the world because I do something really, really well, so be it. If I don't, it's not going to be devastating. If I don't, that's the thing I'm talking about. So for you, it's kind of like, okay, I used to be homeless and a drug addict. Well, okay, whatever. Or maybe you weren't a drug addict, but you did drugs. Okay. If I end up doing $1 million a year and profiting, even after growing 400,000, I'm fine. Okay, I can buy into that because you don't spend a lot of money. But if you spend a lot of money, and I'd be like, well, what happens if all of a sudden you don't have that business anymore? You're like, fuck it, I don't care. I don't have the business. I don't have the business. I have $2 million in the bank and a paid off $500,000 house. I'm fine. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Plus, I mentioned before, like I watched my grandfather build that giant business, and it didn't get him what I feel like really mattered. Or I made that Elon Musk comment about you're calling this guy a success, but he's been divorced 5 times. If I end up divorced from my wife, I would consider that a huge failure. If I then got divorced 4 more times after that, I would have a very tough time calling myself a success regardless of the money, because I know how horrible divorce is for their kids and all that kind of thing.
Are they mutually exclusive though, Brady?
They're not mutually. You can be successful in so many areas is all I'm saying. Right. That like I'm grading myself on a scale like this, not just on the business side of things. And so it's not necessarily like, oh, if it gets to 1 million, like I remember thinking once I got to 100,000, like, oh my gosh, 6 figures, that's bananas. But then once I got there, I go, okay, well, that wasn't too bad, And I had another friend who started a business when we were 24. And by the time we were 27, it had generated 30 million in revenue. It was called Sevenly. And so eventually what happened was he took on so many investors, people who were investing in like Tesla and Pandora and Spotify, and all these big people were, bringing in 3 million to then grow another however much percent. He sold off more than 50% of his business, and his investors kicked him out of the company.
Well, by the way, again, that's another situation of why are you laughing?
Well, it's just one of these things where it's like, I was thinking.
That's what I'm saying. Like, he went and got the people who are, we love your business. Yeah, you're great and everything, but if you don't do what we tell you, if every quarter you're missing, if 1 quarter or 2 quarters you're missing, you're out. That's different than what you're trying to do.
So the point of that was just, they basically bullied him and said, even though your percentage of the company is maybe worth X amount of dollars, you're going to sell it to us for X, or we're going to take you to court and bankrupt you with lawyers. I'm
not trying to be picky, but I'm quite sure they had documents that said all of this up front, that maybe he wasn't as, remember when people are excited when they're ready to get a check, yes to a lot of things they don't, because he's like, hey, I started this business 3 years ago, did 30 million. I'm gonna get to 300 million, as opposed to, oh shit, we had a business. We have a business currently that did $3 million in revenue. And this year it's already down 50% because we had to regroup some things and things like that. And we're trying to rebuild it back up. So I'm not trying to pick on your friend and say,
no, he was wrong. He made all kinds of promises, and 2 years later they had grown a lot revenue wise, but they were still in the red profit wise. And he had also said that he had assets of the company that were like these giant Facebook pages that were helping promote the business, to come to find out later that those were personal assets, that they were not properties owned by the company. And that at any point, if he left the company, he could take those assets with him. They were under the understanding that those were assets of the business. And so once they started to kind of find these things out, and money never came in, they started to go, hey man, what's happening here? The company doesn't own these assets you said they owned. You're really great at growth, but you're not great at making this business make money. We want a return. They just saw him as like, whatever slimy dude. And, it didn't work out. But all that being said, it's just,
Is Sevenly this fair trade clothing?
Yep. So a company used to be way bigger than it is. After he left, the growth part of it just went down because he's just a really good marketer, and he completely left the business world and now is like in the like Christian like teaching world and stuff. He had 3 kids. He settled down in Oregon. But it was just this thing of he wanted the growth so bad, and I used to feel that. And what I was going to say was, he used to tell me, people always come to me and say, I have this $1 million or $10 million idea, and they've never even ran a business with $100,000 before. And so when I was saying, when I got to 100 grand, I was like, wow, I never even thought I'd be here. Now I'm going to get to $1 million. I'm like, whoa, I never thought I'd be here. He's like, just wait. Once you get to that place, you'll start to have ideas. Because he had started a rock climbing gym before that and a personal training company before that. So like his personal training business got to 200,000. His rock climbing gym got to 900,000. And so you start to realize what it takes to operate $1 million, $2 million. And that's when you can actually have realistic ideas for multi-million-dollar companies. And so, now I'm at this place where I'm like, yeah, I'd love to do 2.5 million, but is it, was it my goal from day one? No way. Not even close.
I'm not saying it had to be. I mean, there's going to be things. Seth's goal when he got a PhD in chemistry wasn't to become a podcast host with a cat and a piece of pizza behind him.
Oh yeah, but he's so good at it.
Brady, tell the folks where they can find you.
So we only sell to professional photographers at blacksmithprintco.com. But I am thinking about maybe doing something with just Brady Puryear, BradyPuryear on Instagram, where I just start to share a little bit more of what's worked for me, just practical stuff, because I feel like a lot of advice out there is very woo-woo. And what I love about this podcast, not that I'm going to go start a podcast, is just the very clear-cut, practical numbers. And it's like other people giving advice based on speculation, like buy Tesla stock because it's going up. That's not a thing, right? As opposed to, hey, here's the cash flow of the business. It does well.
Really quick, where's the cash flow for Tesla?
Say that again, Paul.
There's no cash flow.
Where's the Tesla cash flow?
There is none.
Under here? No.
Right.
I'm like, no, not there.
But yeah, I mean, whether it's that other guy or whatever, like I've watched a lot of people build businesses that were built for growth and not built for profit. And so they're X amount of years in, their business does X amount of dollars in sales, but they're still negative P&Ls every month, and I just I'd way rather have a business that had 100,000 with 50,000 in profit than a $1 million business that was losing 200 grand a year.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thanks for coming on today, Brady. This is a long podcast, Paul, almost an hour and a half. Yeah.
I forgot we were on it.
Right. All right. Follow us on YouTube, Learn From Us channel, subscribe below, follow Brady Blacksmith Printing Co. And if you're a photographer and you want to
Print Co.
they just rebranded. I can't keep this shit straight.
Well, if you're going to promote the guy, promote him accurately. Follow Seth Kirchanan at Seth QZRCHQ.org, and he'll help you out.
Thanks for that plug, Paul. I appreciate that. Brady, thanks for coming on. We'll have you on again with another update when you reach that 2 mil, or you sell your business. You sell half your business to Paul to pay off your house.
I'm not selling the business. Just give me the cream. I'll just take the cream and I'll worry about the cream.
Yep. Cool. That's it, right?
Yeah. Thanks, guys. See you around. Learn from us.
That's it, right? Peace.
Cool. That's it, right, bitches? All right. See you guys. Subscribe below. Thanks for joining us.